I remember people talking about that being important, like, oh, did you win? And I think to my credit, to my parents' credit, like, they didn't push that on me. They weren't like, Katie, like, you need to win.
Welcome back to this week's episode of It Takes Grit. Oh my goodness, have I got a guest for you that you are going to absolutely fall in love with. I had the pleasure of meeting Katie Hoff a couple of weeks ago, and she's an Olympian. She's won medals. I mean, like, this girl is just unbelievable. She's going to talk about grit. She's going to talk about finding that deep gear, and then also how you can reinvent yourself when things change, which I feel like is very relevant for what's happening in 2020. So, Katie, welcome to the show. I'm so fired up to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and just love how we met and how this is already happening. So yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, and last time that we met, we were in agony because we just done a 3-hour endurance challenge. So we were hobbling around, and now we're like fully recovered and feeling like we can use our legs again. So that was a super fun challenge. And it's always great to do endurance stuff with people because it makes you feel like that team, like effort. Like I feel like when you're in it with other people, it really makes you feel like you're bigger than yourself and that you're doing something that is really outside of your own comfort zone and people that are around you. So it was super fun having you there.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we share a bond now, just from that.
Yeah, not quite the Navy SEAL bond, but I still feel like we're sharing some bond that's
something.
There. Yeah. Love it. Awesome. Well, I want you to just, first of all, just tell the audience, like, who you are, where you're from, where you live, like how you got into swimming, like, and a little bit about your story. I mean, I'm holding Katie's book right here. We're going to be talking more about her book, which this is going to come out. This podcast will be out the day after her book is out. So go and get your copy of Blueprint. I'm going to put all the details in the link below. But Katie, tell everybody a little bit about where you lived, how you got started, and why swimming? Why was it your thing?
Yeah, so I got started swimming. I was born in California, so I, very briefly dabbled in swimming because I was up until 5 years old, and then we moved to the East Coast, Virginia, and that's really where I got my start. And honestly, it was just because I saw all the cool kids in the neighborhood going to swim practice, and I thought, okay, I want to be like that cool kid down the street. And it was very short-lived. I was really cold, and I was really skinny. And so I told my mom after like 2 months that I wanted to retire at the age of 5. And then I really missed it. I'm not coordinated at all to this day, but the same was true when I was 5 years old on land. So I feel like swimming chose me because, I've gotten like a D. My only D ever is in gym in 4th grade when I had to do like a hand-eye coordination test. I got a D, which was devastating. I did, tap, ballet, jazz, but I didn't like that there wasn't a way to win or like a scoreboard. And so I asked my mom at 7 to go back to swimming, and just really took to it. I wasn't great at first, but I just felt like it was something that I enjoyed. I could put all my competitive spirit into, and never looked back from there. And we ended up, my parents are still in Baltimore, and that's where I actually made both of my Olympic teams.
So talk to me about coordination, because I feel like swimming takes so much coordination, like the breathing, everything, the swim. I mean, I've done some swimming lessons before. And I struggle because of the coordination, but give me some tap shoes and I can tap away. So, but
yeah,
can it just work for you?
Yeah, it's like a different coordination. It's also like a different in shape. Like you could be I could be at world record pace. And if I had at that point gone and tried to run 3 miles, I would be huffing and puffing and dying. So it's like this, it's actually really unfair that the human body kind of separates the two, but it's so true. And so I feel like, the most coordinated athletes, it's very satisfying for me not being coordinated on land to see, big time athletes get in the pool and just struggle to catch their breath. Maybe that's mean, but struggle to catch their breath, and like I get mine this time. And it's just like a very different. I think the biggest thing with swimming is breathing. swimming, right? Like people get in, they kind of have a moment of freak out of like, how am I going to get air, and understanding, you know, how to exhale, how to rotate your head with the right timing. It's a lot more of that than people think. It's not as much being in shape for it. It's having that, that coordination and timing.
Yeah, I completely understand. I'm like, when you get me in water, I'm like a drowned rat. I'm just like, oh my goodness, like I'll just like doggy paddle around. Uh, so tell me, so you started swimming again at 7. So went at 5 years old, wasn't into it, wanted to retire. I love that. 5 years old, I'm going to retire from swimming. Then came back to it. And then what was it? Was there some sort of burning desire that inside that it was like, I can do this, like this is my thing? Like, how did you know at 7 years old, as going through till 10, that like this was your jam, this is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. From the ages of 7 to 9, it was getting back into it. I was enjoying it. It was just like have fun. But I still hadn't caught that obsessive bug. And I say that as a positive thing, right? Obsessed with a really positive endeavor and positive sport. I was just kind of bopping about. And there's times, and I even talk about in the book, where I would, you know, we'd be doing lunges, walking lunges around the pool deck, and my coach would turn away and I would like run a little bit, which is like so embarrassing. It's like the only time I've cheated in my life. And, you know, I was into getting purple and pink ribbons. Purple is still my favorite color, but purple is like 7th and 8th place. Like it's not, I didn't have that competitive flow and competitive juices yet. And then something kind of just hit me. I don't know what it was, but I remember being behind the blocks and talking with my friends about times and doing the race and having this realization of like, wow, like this is a race. I should be caring about winning, and that I need to be more competitive. And I think between that time, around the same time, I was also learning how to work hard. I found this extra deep down gear, I call it, where I just started to understand like, okay, like if I kick harder and pull harder, then I pull ahead of people and I can win. And that feeling, I didn't know it at the time, but like that feeling was super satisfactory of being competitive. And then from there, it kind of went like this and went like this, because I was so obsessed and addicted to that feeling that I was willing to do anything and everything to get it again and again.
So when you were having those conversations with people about like that moment where you realized like this is a race, was it because other people around you were saying anything about like, oh, I want to win? Or like, because sometimes the people that you're around can like push you into the direction. Like, do you think you maybe heard something that was like, oh, I'm going to win this or whatever? And you're like, hell no. Like in your head, you're like, I'm going to win this.
Yeah, I think it was, you know, obviously as kids get older, they're, you know, they start talking, they start getting sassier. And I, you know, I remember people talking about that being important, like, oh, did you win? And thankfully, you know, I think to my credit, to my parents' credit, like they didn't push that on me. You know, they weren't like, Katie, like you need to win. And that's the most important thing. They were like, great, she's having fun. She's learning some skills. She's learning how to work hard, all the fundamentals. And then, yeah, I think it was like, oh, that's the goal here. That's important. Okay. And it kind of clicked at the right time when I was ready for it. And I think that made it so that it wasn't this thing that was a have to. It was oh, wow, this is really cool. I want to do that. How do I do that?
Yeah. So you've now got this competitive streak in you, right? You're just like, hey, there's something else that's just been woken up. Sometimes it just takes, you don't even know. It might be something that you heard in the changing rooms or in the pool, or something that your coach said. It just kind of wakes that up if you put yourself in the right environment. You know, I always talk to my audience about go to personal development, you know, get in the room with other people, go to camp, do things, because you're putting yourself in a position where you can hear something that's going to wake up a part of your brain that might not have been woken up yet. And it sounds like you found that. And then 10 years old, you declare that you're like, I want to be an Olympian.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I think, so 9 years old, I think was the moment where I kind of burst on the scene. I broke my first state record. I made, you know, a regional team where you have to be top 2 in the state, and we got to travel, and we, you know, I was repping Virginia. So again, there was that like really special, unique feeling. And as I started, you know, there was a build up for the Olympics. When I was just turned 11, the Olympic Games happened in 2000 in Sydney. And so there was this build up during that point when I was 10 years old, and I started being very aware of this thing called the Olympics and what that was. Very, very vaguely remember 1996, but I was 7, so I didn't have like full realization. And I remember thinking, again, ignorance is bliss, having no idea what it takes to really do all of that or what it was. But I was like, wow, I want that. Like, I want to be representing my country. That looks amazing. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. So again, you're exposed to something. You're being exposed to something. It was like perfect timing, you know, for like the Olympics to be not just gone when you were 9 years old, like it's actually happening. Everything was timing. Are your parents just like going, because my parents are kind of sound the same to yours. They're not pushy. They're not, you know, in fact, I wanted them to be more pushy at one point, but they just kind of let me get on with it. Were they like, oh my goodness, we have this daughter who's just this amazing swimmer. Like, where the hell did this come from? Like, oh my goodness, like what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think they always knew I was a little, I don't know if this is crazy, but I mean, I tell a story in the book where, you know, I'm 11 years old. We have a family friendly badminton game. And I literally yelled at my own grandma because she served wrong. Like, I just had that, once I found that competitive streak and that fire at 9, I was a monster. Like, I was racing my friends, you know, up the stairs at water parks. I was, you know, yelling at my brother for, you know, board games of Monopoly. Like, it snowballed. It wasn't just in swimming, it permeated my entire life. And I think they were just like, all right, we're just going to put her in the driver's seat. We're going to hop on, and we're just going to support her in any way possible. And that's really what they did. You know, my mom was very much, she was actually a very amazing athlete herself. I inherited 0 of her hand-eye coordination, but she is still like an all-time point scorer at Stanford in basketball. So she got it. My dad was an athlete. So I think they just were like, wow, our daughter is obsessive and intense, and we're just going to like help her channel it to the pool and make sure she's a good sport and all that. And just go on the ride.
I love that. And sometimes, I mean, I was called bossy growing up, bossy and sassy, which now really for girls is just leadership. Like, if you think about it, it's like, I would call bossy all the time. I'm like, no, I wasn't bossy. I was just trying to be a leader. Like, you know, I wasn't sassy. Like, I just knew what I wanted. And so it's funny that those words that we use to describe girls when they're younger, like you would never call a boy bossy, right? You would call him like a leader. And so I heard that the other day, like, you know, I was like, no, I wasn't ever bossy. I was just a leader.
Or you say the word crazy, right? I think like people who are like overly, like I was overly ambitious. I like wanted to do every last rep and then some. And it was, I mean, even to, you know, a few years ago, people would say like, that's crazy Katie. And I say it too, but in all, you know, I guess all realness, it's not really crazy. It's just being ambitious and passionate and a driver.
Yeah. Cause you wouldn't say that to a boy like who's being like, you're like, oh, he's crazy. He's just off the handle. No, he's like, wow, he's going to be an amazing swimmer. He's competitive. Yeah. He's going to be great. He's going to win the Olympics. But a girl does it. It's like, yeah, she's crazy. I love that we brought that up. I think that's really important. And, you know, so 11 years old, you're now watching the Olympics and you're seeing all of these girls that you're looking up to that you're like, oh my goodness, I wanted a piece of that. And you saw that, and did you just get your head down and start working towards that goal? Because then the Olympics were going to come up again in the next 4 years. Like, where was your head at?
I certainly didn't think that in 4 short years, I was going to be swimming on my first Olympic team. That's for sure. I think I was thinking, okay, again, you know, there's kind of this chain of meets that you need to make, right? It's called sectionals. Then there's the national championships. And then, you know, you're looking at, you know, international meets. And so there's this kind of hierarchy. So I was like, okay, well, first things first, I want to make a national cut. So at 12, I made my first national cut. And then at 13, I made my first Olympic trials cut, which is kind of like the, you know, I'd say there's probably 60 to 70 people in the nation per event that make the cut and get to go to the Olympic trials. So that was at 13. So I kind of just kept building momentum. But again, I remember sitting down with my coach a year out of 2004 saying, hey, if I could make the Olympic trials final, meaning I'm top 8 in 2 of my best events, which is the IM, then I think that'd be great. It'd be great experience for 2008. And you know, that's my goal. And that year just, again, I like to do this a lot. So that year just expedited. I dropped so many seconds in both events and ended up going to the trials and winning both of the events and making the Olympic team in 2 events, just because I had improved so much over that year. And I remember, I think I mentioned this at the camp, like, it was like my whole goal was, it was make top 8. And then as we got like really close to the trials, it was like, oh my gosh, like I might make this team. And that's all I was thinking. I was like, okay, make the team. And then I made the team and it was like, oh my God, now I have to swim in the Olympics. So it sounds dumb, right? You're like, obviously you're swimming in the Olympics, but it was a big lesson for me. Like you have to, even if you're, focused on the one goal that's right in front of you, you have to see couple steps ahead so you're prepared for it.
Absolutely. And what you did, and I think Jesse spoke about this, is being present in the moment. Like, yes, you always had the big vision, right? The big vision was already there. I want to be in the Olympics, but it's like, what do I have to do right now to get there, right? I have to do this trial. I have to get to this place. You just keep moving up. Sometimes I think people get so obsessed with the big vision, and then it feels overwhelming. And it's like, I don't know if I can get there. Well, it's like, just break it up. If you want to run, 100 miles, like break it up. What do you need to do, right? Jesse said you run for 6 minutes, you walk for 4. But it's like anything in life. If you want to start a new hobby, a new side hustle, and you're like, oh, I really want to have a dream of like having, a house that looks like this. Well, first of all, you've got to start with drawing it down on a piece of paper, and then one brick goes in at a time, and then you add in other things. So I think that's a really important message. It's like, yes, I have this vision of what I wanted for the future, but you were very present, it sounds like, in the moment of like, I just need to achieve this, and then to the next thing. What was it that made you have that exponential growth of the improving? What was it that you did?
So my family, I was fortunate enough, my family and I moved from Virginia to Maryland about a year out. And I really, really clicked with this coach, and he got me and understood me. And, I think the things that I got a lot stronger in my legs. I was like, I looked like I was like 11 years old at 15. So I was like itty bitty. I didn't have a lot of lower body strength. And I think I just was ready to have a big breakthrough. I was putting in a lot of work leading up to, 11, 12, 13, those developmental years. And it was just like the timing of clicking with the right coach, being very coachable, going above and beyond of putting in the work. There were days where I was doing 10,000 meters, which is, I think that's like, I don't even know how many miles that is. It's like 6 miles in the pool at a time on my own. Like I was literally willing to do whatever I needed to do because I was in such a positive state of like, this is all working and this will pay off and it's super worth it.
So how many hours in the day were you in the pool training? What was your
it ranges. Like there's some days where swimmers, there's some days where swimmers have a single practice. So it's just 2.5 hours. And then there's some days where we call them doubles. So you'll have 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, as well as like an hour strength and conditioning. So I would say anywhere between like 2.5 and 5.5 hours a day.
And is that 7 days a week? Have you got 1 day off? What's the rest period?
So during that period, we actually I remember we had doubles on Saturday and we actually had an 8 a.m. workout on Sunday. I would go in on Christmas. It's not something I'd advise. Like I needed more balance, but at that point, it was just like full throttle, whatever we need to do. Sundays were more recovery, but we were still coming in every single day and really maximizing each workout.
But that's just what it takes. I watched something on Tony Robbins who was talking about Michael Jordan and how many shots that he took per month. I think it worked out to 24,000 shots that he would take per month. And it's like, if that's what you want to achieve, like that's the kind of excellence that you need, because you're going to be up against somebody who could work harder than you and wants to push more. So tell me, you get to the Olympics. What's the feeling when you're like, I'm going to the Olympics? How old were you, like 14?
I had just turned 15. Yeah, I was a baby. I was a bit like, I was not mature. I wouldn't say mature, but I was very naive. Like I was homeschooled at the time. I'd never been out of the country and never even been on a national team. Like I was green as they come. And very, very surreal, very scary. I'd never been away from my parents more than a few days. And I think it was like 6 weeks. And so, yeah, it's just kind of intimidating. And it's all happening so fast. And I feel like you're in this vortex. It's like swirling around. And, I just felt like I'm someone who I do really, really well when I feel really prepared. And when I'm not good at working on the fly. It's just not. Now my husband who you met he's so good at working on the fly. Like that is his thing. I'm jealous. But I need to feel very confident in the process I've put in, and being in that very unfamiliar situation, it definitely shook me.
What do you feel like you were not prepared at most?
I think the pressures of I definitely had put in the training. I was ready for that, but I think I mentally got in my head of, this is the Olympic Games. I'm swimming at the Olympic Games. And the biggest thing that got me was in the prelims of the trials in my first race. I was still kind of a rookie in how I had my race strategy, and I took the race out way too fast and almost didn't make the final and was dead. And all I could think about for 6 weeks, which is like the opposite of what you should be doing, was, oh my God, like I can't do that at the Olympic Games. I can't gain 10 seconds at the Olympic Games, then I won't make the final. Like it was just snowballing. So instead of thinking, okay, new me, new you've got wisdom from the trials, you can do this, your team, I was just thinking about all of that. And I think just got too intimidated of not being in my normal environment, which is just how international meets roll. You don't have your mom cooking for you, you're not in your own bed. Like those are things that, I'm a creature of habit, and I wasn't used to not having those things.
So you don't really have a coach explaining to you, basically preparing you. If you fail to prepare, you're preparing to fail, right? Jim Rohn says that all the time. So you just basically, did you feel like you were just like left to your own devices when you were like in the Olympics? You're like, oh my goodness, I'm 15 now, I've got to figure this out by myself.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it is kind of, you have support, you have coaches. I didn't have my personal coach at the time. He was in 2008, but the selection process for coaches, they can't bring, there's 48 athletes on the team. They can't bring 48 coaches. So there isn't, you don't always have your personal coach. And, at 18 or 19, when you've done it a couple times and you're good, no big deal. But I think that I just my personality and how I normally, when I'm a routine and like creature of habit, and that's how I thrive, I just wasn't ready for it.
So then explain to us what happened at that Olympics for you. What happened? Because I remember you sharing the story at the camp, but I want you to tell people that moment that you had.
Yeah. So the first day 1, 400 IM, which is, the race that at that point just put the fear of God into me. I, didn't breathe in the ready room. I feel like I held my breath, and just swam scared, didn't swim like the confident person that I swam in the finals to make the team. Ended up gaining exactly what I thought would happen, getting out, throwing up all of the pool deck in front of millions, and just having a disastrous debut. Now, the lesson from that, however, is that 2 days later, I rebounded to some extent and made the final. In the 200 IM, I got 7th, so I was still disappointed, but I was still at 15th, 7th in the world, and was able to kind of pull myself together enough to get experience in an Olympic final, which I think really helped me, 4 years after that in Beijing.
That's amazing. So I was looking at some of the statistics. So you get 17th in one of the races and 7th in another overall. And it's like, how are you feeling? I mean, are the other, you've got other Americans that are swimming too. Was people higher, obviously in the when you came 17th, was there people that are higher up than you from America too? Like, what does that feel like if you're beating somebody and they're beating you in the camp with Americans, with the USA team?
Yeah, so I mean, only two Americans go. So it was me and one other girl in both events. And yeah, we actually ended up getting silver in that event in the 400 and silver in the 200. Two teammates that I actually am still really good friends with today. But I think at that point, it was less about that. It was more just survival mode for me. I just felt like I let my team down. Like I wanted to medal for my team. I wanted to feel proud of representing Hoff and USA on my cap. And, there was obviously a lot of expectations that came into coming in and winning 2 of the events at trials, being right off the American record, and everyone's saying, 15-year-old's going to medal, all those things. And, that was even before really, really social media, which I'm thankful for. But I think it was at that point just kind of a blur of, okay, how do I salvage this? Like, just get me home. I need to reset. I need to restart.
Right. So you've thrown up all over the Olympic pool. You have been one of the favorites, and now you didn't medal, and you're 15 years old. Everything's out of whack. You come home, and look, loads of people through 2020 have been through something that they can relate to, and the fact that they tried to show up to something, it went to shit. And it's just like, how do you rebound back from that? How do you rebound back from losing your job, for losing fat, like whatever it is? We've all lost something at some point, but it's like, it's not what happens to us, it's how we react. So
100%.
how did you come back? Did you take a couple of days? Did you ever think swimming's not for me, it's not going to happen? Or were you just like, I'm going to go straight in and start training again? Like, how did you react to it?
I definitely took about a week, just to kind of lick my wounds and feel upset. However, I think the biggest thing that saved, like, I never thought, which now looking back, I'm like, how did I not think that? But I never thought, okay, I'm going to give this up. Like, there was this feeling and desire for redemption. It was like, how can I, like, that was not a fluke that I made the team. That was not a fluke that I swam those times. That's not me. I need to now I need to get that, like, prove it to myself, prove it to everyone else that I am here to stay on an international stage on Team USA. And so I took a week and, huddled up with my coach and, kind of decided that's where I tell this story about this health set. That's where we decided, all right, we're going to prepare so intensely for the 400 IM that it's going to make the 400 IM look like it's nothing, which I was like, oh God. But again, it was playing to my strengths of, I need to feel over prepared. I need to work the process in order to have that ultimate confidence in myself to deliver on a big stage.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's like, yeah, because sometimes you feel like, oh, should I do this? Am I good enough for this? It's just like, yes, it's just a test. I always say that when you fail at something, it's just a learning experience and it's just the universe testing you to see how much you wanted it. And you were like, no, I really want this. I'm going to go after this. I'm going to let the next part of the chapter of your story for the book. So everybody who wants to find out what happens next, you're going to have to go to the book. So I'm going to skip ahead now to after all the Olympics, all of that stuff. And then that dream of still swimming is taken away from you. I mean, this is a big thing that happened to you. There's something else. There's parts of the story. She does amazing. She's come back. She wants to keep swimming and go again. And then you're in a supermarket and you get a call from the doctor. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? What happened?
Yeah. So so definitely can read about the jump so now we're in 2014. I really wanted to make a comeback. I had taken about a year off and enjoy the process. Like I swam in 2 Olympic Games and spoiler, like I never was there and said, okay, this is awesome. Looking around, like I was always stressed out for one reason or another and not really present. And so that was my goal. And I ended up having a pulmonary embolism, which is, I found out, didn't even know what that meant. 2 blood clots were in my lungs and, the scar tissue buildup and another surgery. Essentially the call was, hey, you can keep going, but your lung capacity has been reduced enough that it's going to be almost near impossible to swim where you need to swim, because lungs are really important for swimming, to make it in 2016, to make it in Rio. And I was in the chip aisle at Publix, which is a supermarket for people who, I think it's mainly in Florida, buying stuff for my bachelorette party and just devastated. It was like someone had said, okay, well, you can never work this job again in your life. Like that means that to me, swimming was my job, and in a good way. Swimming was what I did. It was who I was. And yeah, it was a terrible, like the ground just fell out from under me feeling.
So this would have been your 3rd Olympics.
Yes.
This would have been your 3rd Olympics. And quick spoiler alert, she did amazing in the 2016, I believe. So you went from 17th place.
In 2008, yeah.
2004, you were 17th place. 2008, you crush it.
I won 3 medals, yeah.
You got a whole bunch of medals, right? So guys, I'm going to let you read how that all happened in the book, because I don't want to give too much away, because I want you guys to get the book. But make sure that you read how that she got there and what she did, and she, crushed it. Katie's a whole bunch of medals. I mean, this is so badass, to have an Olympic medalist on the podcast, and you're like, who am I right now? This is just crazy. This is just making me feel starstruck. And so that's amazing. So you got that, you got the goal of what you wanted. It's not like you didn't have a medal, but then you were going to go into it again with fresh eyes, and you're different, 4 years more, and you're so young at the time when you won those medals. It's hey, I want to be older. I know more. You felt like you were probably in a better headspace mentally to really crush it, literally dominate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it honestly, though, it was more about, at that point, it was more about just going and enjoying it. Like, I did not enjoy 2008. I was swimming 8 days straight. I was stressed out of my mind. I was being called the female Phelps, which was enough pressure in itself. And I just wanted to go. And regardless of, I probably wasn't going to swim 6 events, which I swam in 2008. I just wanted to be able to, like you said, be older, wiser, more mature. I had way more ownership over my training and my process, and it was going really well. I was swimming really competitive times. I felt very confident, and literally going to a meet that was a national championships to kind of have it be my coming out party. That's when I, got the blood clots, and I wasn't even able to finish the competition. So that I think was the hardest part. People retire, and that's hard enough. And, I talk about that transition too, but when it happens and it's being ripped away from you and you have zero control over it, that's what makes it 10 times harder. I mean, I think that's what makes this year 10 times harder for people, because no one did anything wrong. Like, no one, any business, any entrepreneur, anyone, any athlete, like, they could have been doing everything literally perfectly to the T, and nothing would have stopped what unfolded 2020.
So with the blood clots that you had, did you feel something coming on? Did you feel that your body was being different? Did you go to the doctor? Like, how did that happen?
It's, extreme pain, so much that I couldn't even get in enough air because the pain stabbing in my ribs was so intense that I passed out. Luckily the bed caught me, but I passed out. And like I was misdiagnosed for 7 weeks. Like they thought it was pneumonia. They thought it was an intercostal strain. They had all these things. And I was starting to doubt, like I was truly, like we talked about crazy. Like I was like, thought I was crazy. Like, I'm like, am I making up these pains now? Like, I consider myself a pretty tough person, and to not be able to get in the water and perform like I need to, and still, like, the pains, kind of the intense sharp pains subsided after a little bit, but I was still having this, like, my body would shut down after doing like halfway through the workout and be like, what's going on? Like, I just suddenly can't push through anything cool. And I finally demanded a blood test, and what's called a D dimer was elevated, which is like one possible indicator of a blood clot. And so then they did a CAT scan, and then they were like, I'll never forget, the doctor walked into the room and he was like, yep, you've got 2 blood clots in the bottom of your right lung. Like, we need you to get in this wheelchair and we'll wheel you up and admit you. And I remember being like, I have been doing workouts on these stupid things. I am not getting in a wheelchair, A. And B, I felt relief. There was like a level of relief because, again, like when something's happening to you and you don't know why, you start to doubt everything about your thought process, about what you're doing. And so at least I knew what was causing the pain and the, the stress.
Yeah. So, okay. So you get diagnosed with that. At the time, were you like, oh, this doesn't matter, I'm going to have them removed, I'm going to be able to find it, make it fine again? Or were you like, you knew at that moment, you're like, oh, I'm done?
No, I mean, at that point, even like when you get blood clots, you get put on a blood thinner. And again, I didn't know. They were like, you're going to get put on blood thinners. And I thought that actually meant, I'm like, so does that affect my endurance in the pool? I'm still in the mode of not like, oh, wow, 100,000 people die every year from this, you should be thankful you're alive. I'm thinking, okay, like, how do I get back in the pool? And like, is this going to affect me? And like, what, that was my mindset. And, it took me a second. And then no, I even when the doctor in the chip aisle, or called me in the chip aisle, told me, hey, there's a possibility that this isn't going to work, or a strong possibility, I still tried for another 6 months to see if I could just make it work. So it took me running my head against the wall a couple times before I truly accept, okay, like, this isn't working. I need to close this chapter.
Wow. So did they go in and operate? Like, what do they do for stuff like that? Or is it just medication?
Yeah. So unless it's like this massive clot, which I wouldn't have been able to fly. I mean, I would have been dead if it was that large, doing what I'd been doing. But the blood thinner allows your body to dissolve them itself. So usually it takes, a couple weeks. But again, like, they had been in there 7 weeks, spasming, and just like any injury, there's scar tissue. And so I had scar tissue buildup in my lungs, and that was a big source of why I was still having trouble breathing, 6 months to a year, even 2 years after I had the clots.
Wow. So even like after that, you just knew that my body was never going to be able to be what it was before. And then I'm never going to have the capacity that I need to get to where I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think ultimately the thing too was like I made a comeback to enjoy the process, and I was miserable human being every single day. Like I was doing the opposite of enjoying the process because I was just struggling, fighting for air. I wasn't going times I needed to go. And so I was becoming depressed, and I wasn't being the wife I needed to be. I wasn't being, the person I needed to be. And so that I think was the ultimate, okay, like this is bigger than swimming. You for the sanity of you and the people around you, it's time to close the chapter and move on and find something new.
I feel like a lot of people this year have obviously had something whipped away from them, a job that they've loved. I mean, I have one of her friends, and she's worked for Virgin Atlantic. It's her dream. She's worked for Virgin Atlantic, as an air stewardess, but she's worked close with Richard Branson. She's been in first class. She's like been their poster child, been in every single magazine that you can imagine to be with Virgin. And this year lost her job and been with them for 15 years. And that was all that she ever wanted to be, like all she wanted to do. And she'd made it to the top. I mean, she's hanging out with Richard Branson. She's on she's doing the whole thing. She's like the Virgin Atlantic poster child. And when I saw that she lost her job, I was just like, wow, like sometimes you're so into what it is that you have going on, you never even look on the outside. Like, I'm sure that at the time you weren't going, well, I think one day I'd like to, do this. You're like in the present moment. I'm a swimmer. This is what I'm doing. I can't think of anything else. And so I feel like so many people this year have had, things whipped away from them. How long did you feel sad? Did you feel depressed? Did you hide on your sofa? Did you just went into like complete like cave mode? Or were you like, I'm just going to get on with it? Like, how was that process getting out of that for you?
So I would say that I did not handle it well. I think I thought I was handling it well. I think, I was like, okay, great. Like recreate myself. And I wanted nothing to, which again, like I was kind of running away from my entire swimming career. Like I didn't want to do clinics. I didn't want to do speaking. Like, some people will kind of transition and move into coaching or that piece. And that's kind of how they heal. I kind of chose the run away, a way of healing, and just kind of was like, I'm going to reinvent myself as this, salesperson or this corporate person. I'm just going to, dominate that. And I'm, so I kind of just pushed down all the feelings of sadness, of depression, and they manifested themselves in other ways. I kept having breakdowns. I kept not finding fulfillment when I was doing. I jumped around, and I just couldn't find what swimming had given me for so long, that level of that extraordinary feeling that I always talk about. And it really took, ultimately, to be honest, like it took, and I'm still a work in progress, but it took writing this book and really being raw and vulnerable with myself, with everybody, about my story, about the challenges, about the triumphs, and starting to speak and share my story. And that's really started to give me that extraordinary feeling again, being able to feel like, okay, if I can make a positive impact and share my story with a group of people, and one person from that group comes away and is in a better spot, that to me gives me in a very different way, but a very similar way, what I got from swimming. And so it's only been, it took me probably 3 or 4 years to get through that transition. But I think the thing that I did right in all of that was I didn't stop. Like I kept trying, I kept getting back up, I kept doing different things. I just was relentlessly on this quest of finding what that new thing was, even though there were so many nights where I broke down in tears. There were so many nights where I doubted, what am I even doing? Or, I'm nobody now, or there's so much of that going on. And I definitely very much talk about that honestly in the book, because I think that's so important to say and talk about. And I think that sometimes people you just see the highlight reel and you don't see all of the behind the scenes that is pain and suffering and self-doubt and all of those things that we all go through. It's just like you said before, how you react to them.
Yeah, and it's like you've got to figure it out until you figure it out. It might take you a month, might take you a year, it might take you a couple of years, but it's like you just have to keep showing up and figuring it out until you're there. That's really the only way to do it. And you're like, you tried a whole bunch of stuff. Like I was in this job, I tried this, it's whatever. It's like, nope, that didn't work. Okay, no problem. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to do this. Nope, that differently. And then you start to go, well, is there ever going to be anything else that I can do that I love so much? And
yeah,
and
like, it's me. I'm the problem, not the job. I'm the problem.
Right. And lastly, as we just finish up and wrap up on this, which is a perfect segue into talking about finding that deep gear, like that deep down gear. And I call it grit. I call that deep down gear grit. And then people say, well, what does grit mean to you? It's like, it's finding that thing that just like makes you just like keep on going and never quitting. But for you, talk to us about your theory of this, finding this deep down gear, when you found it and how you've been able to use it in your life. Because I think if everyone can just tap into that, if they can find it, they're going to have more confidence and belief in themselves.
For sure. Yeah. So the deep down gear, that the little backstory of that is, I found racing in practice one day when I was 9 years old, and ran home to my dad that night and said, Dad, I found deep down. He was like, okay, can you say more about what you mean? And it was just this moment where I found, okay, I can go to this place that it definitely hurts more, right? Physically in a sporting sense, but it was allowing me to go faster and pull ahead of people and be that much more successful. And I saw that after doing that consistently for a while, it translated to success in my sport and in the pool. And I think that at 9 years old, which I was fortunate to experience this at 9 years old, taught me that, okay, there's always that little extra bit that you can give. And I think a lot of people know that, right? They know there's that extra bit, but do they believe how much of a difference it's going to make? Like, that little bit is this much in, good versus great, okay versus extraordinary, and it's worth it. And a lot of times it's painful and it sucks and it's rough, and you have moments of like, I don't know if I can do this, but you just kind of have to set in stone, non-negotiable, I'm going to keep consistently do this, because I am just going to trust that it's going to pay off in some way, somehow, at some point.
Yeah, I love that. I think Jesse said to us, it's finding that 20% more, like do something and then can you give it 20% more? Like find that, like that deep down gear. I have a part in my book that says work hard and go the extra mile. So I feel like that going the extra mile is that deep down gear that you have, because it really is easy to be successful as long as you follow what you're supposed to do. Like most people just will not follow I'm sure that you've coached kids and you're like, hey, you need to do X amount of lengths, and they come in and they've done 5 less. You're like, well, all I'm telling you to do is do what I did, like just duplicate what I've done. And then you'll get people who will do the 20 lengths they're supposed to do, and then they'll do an extra 4, right? It's about going that extra mile. And I think that once you've got that in your mindset, that going the extra mile, I love what you said. You said that knowing that going that extra mile and finding that deep down gear works. Like it does give you the edge. It does give you the edge over other people. I think that's awesome.
And I think one thing too to that, right? Like if it's something that I don't care about or I don't see value in, I will not find the deep down gear. I think that's the biggest. Sometimes people are doing something that maybe they're not passionate about, and that's impossible, right? Like you can't just find deep down gear in something that it doesn't make sense to go to that gear, or it doesn't eventually, and right, it may not be this year, or it may not be in 2 years. And that's even harder to find the deep down gear when it's a lot longer and you have to wait a lot longer for that satisfaction. But as long as you can narrow in on, okay, I'm the top of the mountain, that is absolutely worth it to get up there and absolutely worth it to go into that uncomfortable deep down gear, then you'll be able to elicit that. But the hardest part is finding something that's worth it.
Oh, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Totally. Because you're not going to get motivated or driven by something that the outcome isn't even something that you even want.
Yeah, you're
like, hey, I'm not going to find gear swimming right now because I'm not really that interested in getting to the Olympics. So that's not my thing, right? And, vice versa. If someone's like, hey, I really want to, write, if they want a book, but they don't really want to write a book about it, you're not going to find that gear to be able to do it. So I think that's so important. And then you do loads of things to find out what that one thing is that you're really passionate about, that you're really excited about. And then that's where you're going to find that deep down gear. So
yeah, you have to be just as obsessed about finding it as when you find it, and I think I kind of was fortunate where I kind of fell into it when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. But then I had to re-find it when I retired, and I was super lost of like, well, how am I supposed to find 2 things that I'm that obsessed about in one lifetime. And for the longest time, I didn't think it was possible, but it's possible.
Yeah, I love it. Like, we are so aligned. Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story. Where can everybody find your book? Evie, she's got Michael Phelps on here. She's got Jesse Itzler. She's got all the names. It's amazing. And it's super interactive as well. She's got QR codes on here where you can really interact with the book as well. So where can they get it?
Yes, so it launches on, obviously, so it'll be, you launch this on the day after. So it is launched yesterday on Amazon. So she'll drop the link, but yeah, on Amazon you can purchase. I'm trying to break some records. Of course, I'd be crazy if I didn't say that as a competitive swimmer. But yeah, on Amazon, and then it'll be on my website after that.
Amazing. And where can they find you on all the social media handles? Where are you at?
Yes, so I am the letter K, the letter T, Hoff, Hoff, the number 7, which is the lane I made my first Olympic team in. So that's what the 7 is. And then just kthoff.com is my website.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate your time, guys. Make sure that you go and grab a copy of Katie's book. Go follow her on Instagram. And wow, what an inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So appreciate the chat.
So take out those excuses of why you're not good at something and get good at it, right? If you take out all excuses, you're going to get so much further in your life. Take out the excuses, show up,